Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end. In this episode, it's the 9 greatest teams. Why 9? That's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings. Prime 9. Our number one ground rule in choosing the 9 best teams was that they had to have won the World Series.
The Yankees win 13-5 and once again are world champions.
So you won't be seeing the 06 Cubs who won 116 games, or the 54 Indians and their 111 wins, or even the Mariners of 2001.
116 wins!
They were all great teams, but they simply didn't finish the job. Oh, and if we had a representative from a particular dynasty, the rest of that club's teams from that time period were no longer considered.
For the 3rd time in a row, they are the world champions.
Otherwise, you'd be seeing an awful lot of the same faces. Not to say a franchise like the Yankees won't be well represented. They can, after all, lay claim to quite a few dynasties. So here are baseball's 9 greatest teams, starting with number 9 on Prime 9. Ralph Houck took the Yankees' reins from Casey Stengel in 1961. And he promptly made a move at the top of the rotation.
Stengel pitched Whitey Ford every 5 days. And then Houck said, Whitey, how do you feel? Can you go every 4 days? And Whitey said, yeah, I can pitch every 4 days. And the rest is history.
And history shows that Ford responded with a phenomenal season, one worthy of a Cy Young Award.
Whitey was at the top of his game. He almost was unbeatable that year.
Ralph Terry won 16 games while losing just 3. And Luis Arroyo filled the relief ace role, saving 29 games while winning 15.
The pitching was just sensational.
But it wasn't pitching that the 61 Yankees were best known for. It was the prolific home run bats of Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle. Mantle hit 54 before an injury slowed him down, and Maris went on to set a single-season record with 61. And under the radar, some other men in pinstripes also provided plenty of power.
Everyone gets caught up in Mantle Maris without question, but there are a lot of unsung heroes on that Yankee ball club. Guys like Moose Skowron, Yogi Berra, Elston Howard, and Johnny Blanchard, each hitting over 20 home runs.
The 240 long balls they hit as a team held fast as the record for 35 years.
The home run has become synonymous with the Yankees this season.
Everybody in that lineup was a threat.
The Yankees won 109 games in 61, and even with an ailing Mantle, they blew past the Reds in 5 games to win it all.
The Yankees once again are world champions.
I'll never forget that year because it's the greatest team I played with. I'm very proud to be a member of that team.
The 1986 New York Mets were the kind of team that inspired strong feelings.
They were bold, which was a reflection of the manager. They were cocky.
Our confidence was sky high. There was no question that everybody hated us, but we loved it.
Perhaps some of that hatred came from the fact that they were so hard to score against.
They had one of the best staff ever collectively as a team. If you got one hit a night, you wanted to throw a party.
Headlining the staff was the reigning Cy Young Award winner.
He had that big curveball that guys just couldn't hit.
There it is.
We had Bobby Ojeda.
He was a very creative pitcher. He mixed his pitches up well.
Curveball got him looking.
Ron Darling was a very mature pitcher, very smart, had excellent stuff.
Swing and a miss, he got him.
And the big left-hander from Hawaii, Sid Fernandez.
He had a good, sneaky fastball, along with a real excellent curveball.
3rd strikeout for Sid Fernandez.
And we had a bullpen with McDowell and Orozco, which you knew you had a setup man and you had a closer.
And supporting it was a lineup that led the National League in runs, hits, batting average, and slugging percentage.
We had Hernandez at first.
Look at Hernandez! Woo!
Mookie Wilson, Lenny Dykstra. We had Kid Carter behind the plate.
This ball is out of here!
Darryl Strawberry, Wally Backman, Ray Knight.
This mix of torrid hitting and stingy pitching allowed the Mets to clinch their division with more than 2 weeks left in the regular season.
They're spreading the news that they are right now the dominant team in this game.
They were then put to the test in the playoffs and survived some of the most nail-biting baseball ever played.
We felt that as long as we had an at-bat left, that we had an opportunity to pull the game out.
Best group of guys I've ever had the opportunity to play with. That team was remarkable.
Now, the 1970 season was critical to the Baltimore Orioles because 1969 was an embarrassment to lose the World Series to the underdog New York Mets.
The Mets are the world champions.
The Orioles were so motivated by their loss to the Mets, they kicked off the 1970 season with 5 straight wins. This team was strong in every phase of the game, just what their manager ordered.
This was a team fashioned in the mind and the philosophy of Earl Weaver.
One run ain't gonna do it. That's just what we need to wake us up. But go after him. Come on, Jimmy.
It's going to get great pitching. It's going to get a lot of hitting.
The Orioles continue the shelling.
It's going to get phenomenal defense.
Mark Belanger makes a lunging grab.
16 games into the season, they took over first place for good and never looked back.
Baltimore won 108 games that year, best in the majors. And their superb pitching staff featured a trio of 20-game winners.
The 10th strikeout for Jim Palmer. Second man on the third. Crafty pitching by Mike Cuellar.
We won 20 games because we pitched well, but we also were very well supported. We had a great offensive team.
They led the league in runs, walks, and on-base percentage, thanks in great part to future Hall of Famer Frank Robinson and the AL MVP, Boog Powell.
Boog Powell's been doing it all year with consistency.
You just go right on down the line. There was just nobody to pitch to. It was just quite a show. I mean, we had a complete team.
That team met the Reds in the World Series, which turned into a fielding showcase for Series MVP Brooks Robinson.
Brooks Robinson belonged in heaven, not here on the ground, because the way he plays third, I've never seen nothing like it.
Robinson with a 4-point landing, letting the world know he has it.
Brooks and the O's won in 5 games, avenging their World Series loss the year prior.
Baltimore is the world champ.
It really goes back to 1969 when we were upset by the Mets. I think most people thought that we had a better team, but we weren't able to win a World Series, and I think we made sure that that wasn't going to happen again.
The year-long run for redemption is over.
Our next team takes us back in time.
1909 Pirates, the winners of 110 games. They led the league in doubles, triples, runs, batting, slugging. This was a team across the board who was an offensive powerhouse.
One led by an iconic baseball name and a member of the original Hall of Fame class of 1936.
Honus had one of his better years in 1909.
He was practically a one-man show at the plate, leading the league in so many categories.
Wagner probably carried that team along on his broad shoulders.
The hallmark of this ball club happens to be Wagner and the pitching performances of the various members of the staff.
A staff that featured 2 20-game winners.
The staff was led by Howie Kamnitz, a 27-year-old right-hander who won 25 games.
Another good pitcher was Vic Willis, Hall of Famer, won 22.
Pittsburgh won the pennant and met the Detroit Tigers in the World Series, one that featured a matchup for the ages.
Wagner's Pirates made the World Series against Ty Cobb's Tigers, and it was thought to be the meeting of the 2 greatest players of the era, and Wagner outperformed Cobb during that World Series.
But although Wagner out-hit Cobb by more than 100 points, it was a much more unheralded Pirate who emerged as the hero.
In 1909, it was an up-and-coming control pitcher named Babe Adams, who really hadn't been much of a factor during the regular season, yet he started 3 games, completed all of them, won all of them, and this was a 7-game victory for the Pirates over Ty Cobb's Tigers.
No National League team has ever won more than Pittsburgh's 110 regular season games and won the World Series. They were one of the all-time great teams. To number 5. In the early 70s, Cincinnati featured a team that was so powerful it became known simply as the Big Red Machine. But this machine had trouble finishing its job.
We had already lost 2 World Series in 70 and 72, so we were at a point where the Big Red Machine was so known, but yet we hadn't won anything, and everybody expected us to do that.
When they got off to a slow start in 75, manager Sparky Anderson decided it was time to make a bold move.
Sparky called me in the office, and he said, "Pete, we got to get some offense." I said, "Sparky, I'm leading the league in hitting. What do you want me to do?" He said, "I want you to play third base and to give George Foster a chance to play in the outfield."
And the insertion of Foster seemed to be just the spark the Reds needed.
That team was so good. You had 8 players that were basically all-stars.
The machine led the league in runs and outscored their opponents by a run and a half per game.
They were an awesome offensive club. They could run. They could hit home runs.
Ben swings, hits it, that's all.
They were a double, triple engine. This was a team that bludgeoned you to death.
They clinched in game 142 on September 7th, won it by 20 games, and swept the Pirates aside in the LCS.
And this one belongs to the Reds.
Facing the Red Sox in the World Series, the 75 Reds were eager to erase the past.
We played 2 World Series before, and we lost, and we really want to win that one.
And in the 9th inning of the 7th game of an all-time great series, NL MVP Joe Morgan made that a reality.
In 75, it seemed like every time the team needed something, I was the guy that was on the spot.
Griffey scores with the go-ahead run.
That's what you dream about, being the guy in those situations and coming through.
As did the Reds, like a finely tuned machine.
It's just a team that is perfectly fit together. I don't think there'll ever be another team like that.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
The 1939 season for the New York Yankees definitely got off to an inauspicious start. We saw Lou Gehrig play his final games, and we also saw Joe DiMaggio miss a significant amount of time. So right off the bat, they were dealt this heavy-handed blow.
But nothing was about to stop the 1939 Yankees. Red Rolfe came up huge, leading his league in runs, hits, and doubles. And despite missing almost a month, Joltin' Joe went on to capture his first of 3 MVP awards.
DiMaggio comes through.
And there was more.
There were 5 guys on the Yankees roster that year that hit over 300. And there were 4 guys that hit 20 or more home runs and drove in at least 100 RBIs. Simply remarkable what this offense was able to do.
They led their league in home runs, runs scored, and slugging percentage.
The offense that this club generated, absent Gehrig, was amazing.
But this team had still another specialty.
The Yankees demanded not just hitting, they wanted good glove work, and they got it.
They committed the fewest errors in their league, and their pitchers allowed the fewest runs. 7 Yankee pitchers had double-digit wins in 39, led by Red Ruffing with 21.
Another 20-game winner in the long history of elite starting pitchers for the New York Yankees. He was the linchpin that held the pitching rotation together.
This amazing combination of hitting, pitching, and defense led to the greatest run differential in history. The Yankees went 106-45 that year, a .702 winning percentage, and they swept the Reds in the World Series.
After the Yankees had just won their 4th consecutive World Series, there was a cry, break up the Yankees. If you want to pick the greatest team of all time, 39 Yankees were simply as good as anybody.
Boys, as Babe Ruth has already stated that the Yankees of the pennant already won, I feel that it's up to you boys to show him that he's all wrong.
And Mac's 1929 Philadelphia A's proceeded to do just that, with a roster rife with talent.
The batting lineup contained great sluggers. Bing Miller, Mickey Cochran, Al Simmons.
Al Simmons led the league in batting average a couple of times. He led the league in total bases. He was able to rack up 60 or 70 extra base hits a year.
Number 3, Mickey Cochran, the hittingest catcher in baseball.
A career batting average of .320 and a career on-base percentage of .419. And each of those figures is the highest in the history of baseball for anybody who's caught 1,000 or more games in their career.
Common saying in baseball that every batter loves his base hits, and I'm no exception.
Jimmy Foxx was an overwhelming power hitter. He was just a physical presence that really intimidated a lot of the pitchers of his time.
Along with Bing Miller, Mule Haas, and Jimmy Dykes, the A's led their league in OBP and OPS.
This is a great lineup, but the reason that they surpassed the Yankees in '29 was the incredible starting pitching.
It was a very powerful threesome. Lefty Grove, George Earnshaw, and another left-hander named Rube Wahlberg.
Grove and Earnshaw combined for 44 of the A's 104 wins, and they promptly took down the Cubs in the World Series. The highlight of the series was a legendary explosion, a 10-run inning to overcome an 8-run deficit in Game 4.
The combination of the two 20-game winners and the highly potent offense took the Philadelphia Athletics in 1929 to the promised land.
We now return to Prime 9, where in this episode we're spotlighting baseball's greatest teams. These are the teams that put together the greatest single seasons of all time, which of course had to include a World Series victory. It's probably no surprise that our top two teams happen to wear the same uniform, but they did so more than 70 years apart. We begin with number 2. You'd be hard-pressed to find a weakness on the 1998 Yankees.
What was there about that team that didn't impress you?
Defensively, offensively, pitchers that threw strikes, that had really good stuff. Role players, guys that didn't play every single day but contributed on a huge basis.
Shane Spencer, wow, do you believe it?
We had one goal in mind, and that was to win. Guys had great years, but it was a matter of the only statistic that was important for us was the win column.
And win they did, thanks in part to a smart and unified approach at the plate.
We didn't have sluggers who just swung for the fences. We had patient hitters who worked at counts and tried to hit line drives, go the other way.
I don't think from top to bottom that a lineup consistently made a pitcher work as much as the 98 team and really opened the eyes of baseball about how important that is to be selective at the plate.
They also had a talented and productive staff, with 6 of their pitchers winning 10 games or more.
The depth that they had in their pitching staff, David Cohn, Andy Pettit, David Wells.
David Wells has pitched a perfect game.
You had the setup guys in Stanton and Jeff Nelson. You had a closer in Mariano Rivera.
Mariano Rivera throws a 1-2-3 ninth inning.
Once they had a lead going into the 7th inning, the game was over.
They set a franchise and an American League record for wins. A World Series title would be a fitting coronation.
Everything went perfect. Everybody did what they were supposed to do. We just continually won. But it could all just be thrown away if we didn't win the World Series.
And so they did, going 11-2 in postseason play, securing their place as one of the greatest teams of all time.
125 wins, unheard of.
To perform as well as we did and ultimately deliver upon that. To me, that's what makes the team one of the best in the history of the game.
But not quite the very best. That honor goes to another New York team.
The 1927 Yankees established a dominance that had never been seen before and perhaps has not been seen since.
This was a completely dominating club. Ruth, Gehrig, Lazzeri, Combs, Musial.
This rare assemblage of talent was called Murderer's Row.
The Babe set a home run mark that would stand for 34 years, and Lou Gehrig drove in more runs than anyone before him.
That was the season that he told baseball, I am as great a player as my teammate Babe Ruth.
The 27 Yankees scored more than 200 runs above the league average, and the long ball was their specialty.
They out-homered any other club by over 100. It was a case of run-scoring overkill.
And then there was the pitching staff, which boasted the American League's top 3 qualifiers for earned run average in the trio of Wilcie Moore, Waite Hoyt, and Urban Shocker.
They allowed
over 100 runs fewer than any other team in the American League.
It all added up to a 110-win season, 19 more than any other AL team that year.
Given that the offense obviously was legendary and their pitching staff had 2 Hall of Famers, you kind of wonder how this team lost as many games as they did.
Their meager 44 losses earned them a .714 winning percentage and a reputation so intimidating that legend has it that they all but won the World Series against the Pirates during batting practice.
When the Pittsburgh Pirates were sitting in the stands and watching all the balls go out of the park, it was Gehrig and Ruth. I think it beat them right there.
Well, they still played the games, and the Yankees won all 4, leaving no question where they stand in the history of the game.
It's a phrase and an image by itself, the 27 Yankees.
They're almost a synonym for dominance. They've come to define greatness. There's been no team that's captured the imagination quite like the 1927 Yankees.
So now that we've chosen the greatest team of all time, let's consider one that's become synonymous with quite the opposite. And we only have to travel from the Bronx to Upper Manhattan to find it. For despite being managed by a future Hall of Fame skipper in Casey Stengel, the 62 Mets in their first year of existence reached levels of ineptitude that defied belief. Led by a pitching staff that allowed just under 6 runs a game, the Mets finished 60.5 games behind the San Francisco Giants. They lost 120 games, the most by any team since 1899, which begs the question, how did they ever win the other 40? Well, Casey had a way of explaining it, sort of.
They make up wonderful placards. The placards are terrific. I even have to stop and look at them. I think I made 15 mistakes this year reading the placards.
That's Casey, and that's our Prime 9. What's yours?